handed to me dated 1 o'clock today. Ads about the refurbishing the 2006 Zodiac.
Yeah, that's the part I wanted to make sure everyone was aware of. I wanted to make sure.
This is the first I've seen it. Yeah, I don't have it. And my colleagues don't have it. So let's just make sure we revisit this because we don't all have it. And I haven't had a chance to really look at it.
Okay.
All right, I'm going to start the meeting then.
Okay.
Yes, just turn on my mic. That'd be great. Okay. It is 1:48, opening up Environmental Matters Committee meeting. My colleagues and I, Alderman Arnett, Alderman Pfeiffer and I are at the center table because we have by phone participating in this Harbor Master Monk. Am I pronouncing your last name right?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. We have a few people in the audience. So context of this was, first I had seen about this grant was when I finally got to reviewing the agenda for this Monday's meeting. The agenda was only released on Wednesday, the Wednesday before. Got to it over the weekend, and I had a number of questions, and I had asked for this postponement because I felt like, although I don't know the answers to these questions, I felt like they were worth waiting to vote until we had answers to these questions. It is the only item on our agenda to just review this budget request. So I'd like to start with asking who from the administration would like to present this GT. Okay. If you'd like to come join us, why don't we share mics? Maybe if you give him his, you got Ian's, and you and I can share.
Okay, I'm David Street, Assistant Harbor Master. We're here today to basically to purchase a new patrol boat 1, and we're going to try to accomplish this from a transfer of existing funds that are already in the budget from salaries, benefits, rents and leases, which was the cancellation of our lease on the property, what do you call it? I forgot the name of it, right across the street.
What's that?
One-time compromise.
Say what? The Chandler Dock, the cancellation of that lease, which gives us another $22,000. And then the other thing was the vehicle replacement, which was $24,000, which is in the budget, which we're not even going to use.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but is that 24,000 vehicle replacement, is that specifically within the Parks and Recs budget?
It was in the police, not the Harbor Master's budget.
It was in the Harbor Master?
Yeah.
So it would be Parks and Rec.
So, well, it would all be Parks and Rec, right?
Okay.
And so that comes to a total of $89,000, which is what the purchase price is now for the new boat.
Okay.
Which the new boat, which we sent out material to you about, is an Everglades boat, 24 foot, 250 horsepower. It's a similar boat now that the Natural Resources Police are using for their patrol boats. It has a self-draining hull. It's all fiberglass, no wood. Has all kinds of specifications, which I think is attached to your documents.
I haven't seen
really,
that.
really good things like stainless steel
this packet?
backing. Yeah, it's further. Yes, sir. It's further back in there.
Give us.
It's unsinkable, no wood, plush. Had built-in towers, finished compartments and bilges. Comes with a trailer. It's going to be really low maintenance. It'll be a vessel that, with a Yamaha outboard on the back, we'll be spending tons of money less on maintenance and so forth. And we'll be able to use it in our harbor functions. It has a lot of room on board for events where we have to transport people on the boat. It's also room for the collections, which are real important component of our job, and also for code enforcement around the city waters. And then any kind of rescues that might happen. A lot of times, things happen in the harbor because we are there. You know, I'm sure the fire and the police do respond to these things, but, you know, we're, a lot of times during the daylight hours when we're working, somebody falls off a boat's dragging up on the beach, people on board, there's somebody in danger. You know, people they call us as we call the police and everybody else, and it takes them for a while to respond, but we're usually the ones that a lot of times get there first and at least hold down the fort, maybe pull somebody out of the water or something like that. And we're not going to sit and do the whole investigation if it's a boat fire or something. We're going to pull people out of the water, and the fire department's going to be there hopefully in time. You know, we've had the sailboat races where winds come in and just wipe everything out. And sure, everybody's going to respond, but we're there. If we have a boat, we get this boat, we'll probably be putting it on side slip 3 or slip 4 will be, you know, readily available to any staff that might be working. To get
I
right
at
out
least
there.
want you to be there.
Yeah, there you go, right. So we'll do our best to, you know, if we're working, we'll be there. And the boat will be in the water ready to go. And this boat is, you know, simple to run. It's low maintenance. We can basically turn the key and go, sit down for it. The existing patrol boat we have now is you know, it's good. But it's slow. It's a diesel. And we have monumental maintenance issues with it. Right now it's working. It didn't work last year from practically July all the way till February. We finally got it fixed. When we had to get parts, it's always from Austria. When we get somebody to work on it, it's very expensive. We can almost buy a new boat every couple of years for what we do in maintenance on that boat. It's good as far as, you know, in tight quarters. But you just never know what's going to happen next. It's got a computer that we, you know, just hold your breath on. It's working good now. It's got an outdrive system that's probably going to need to be rebuilt. The electric system, the solar business was a great idea. It's nice, but if the engine broke down right now while you're in it, you'd be lucky to get to Spy Creek Bridge before the battery goes dead, and you'd be going
What
at such
bridge
a
is
slow
that?
speed. Spy Creek Bridge.
No, I mean, isn't that the Eastport Bridge?
Oh, the Eastport, yeah. Well, we call it Spy Creek too. So,
You got to get up to date.
yeah, it is fine.
Does the new boat require any special expertise to operate?
Not any more than what we got. We got, you know, 3 certified boat Coast Guard captains. We've got ready to hire 4 more, and we got another 6 boat operators who have been, you know, operating the boats on the water of the harbor for, you know, 2 or 3 or 4 years. Who are very adept at it. I would think that we'd be able to train our people a lot faster with this boat. I mean, the other Patrol Boat 1, it's got a lot of quirks and a lot of things you got to do. It's an inboard boat. You got to always be on the ball on things. Things get loose. You know, the manifolds or something come loose. You got to be able to respond quickly. On that boat, if you pull alongside a boat and you're collecting fees with it, you got to keep putting the transmission in to keep the manifold temperature down before it doesn't overheat. But, you know, it's got good things, but it's a diesel, and a diesel, the diesel engine, they say, is reliable, although we've gone through 1 or 2. We've had vibration issues with them, but we finally gotten fixed under warranty. And that has helped a lot. But the electric part, maybe, you know, we were first in line for that. It's a great idea. But it sure needs more power. And the amount of money we'd have to spend on batteries to make that part feasible, at least out in the front 40 of moorings, would be a lot of money. And you really need power around Severn River and so forth. You just can't idle along slow, because some days it's windy. And, you know, you got a lot of big, very expensive boats, and you've got to be able to perform, get alongside them without damaging. And when we mean out damaging, we got to get alongside the boat without leaving any mark on them. Period. We leave any mark, we hear about it. But anyway, the new patrol boat this is a one-shot affair because of the money being available. We won't be encumbered by any kind of grant, anything like that.
So, let me ask you a few questions.
Mm-hmm.
Let's start big picture. How many boats does the city of Annapolis own? Between police, fire, harbor master?
Well, I don't know, I can't really answer all that. I know what we have, Harbor Master. We got Patrol 1,
Right.
we got Patrol 2, Little Zodiac, and the pump outfit.
Okay, so that's 3 boats. And how many boats does the police have?
I understand they have one, but I've never dealt with it.
Chief, maybe you can answer. My question, what do we
Dave.
call you, by the way?
David.
And even in this setting? Watch Commander, what's your title? I try to use,
Assistant Harbor Master.
okay. I try to use people's titles when we're
Okay,
in this
that's
setting.
good.
I'm Jared in other settings too, but. So my question was, and we have to share mics. How many boats does the city have? And really, talking about boats that can be used for patrol, does the city own? Start with your name and.
Deputy Fire Chief Kevin Simmons, Fire Department. Police has a boat that I understand is not operational at this time. Fire has a boat, and I don't know how many boats that we have in the Harbor Master. It's 3. Fire's the fire boat.
So you're not going to be using that for patrol?
Is that the question?
Well, we're talking about buying a patrol boat, and so I'm trying to understand if we're operating in silos, or are we talking to each other, and are there boats that the city already owns that can be used for the purposes of this patrol boat rather than buying, spending $95 on a boat?
Yeah, I can't answer that question.
I can speak to that.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
So what I would say is the police vessel is most likely encumbered by a fairly comprehensive grant. It's a 26-foot boat. If I understand it correctly, it's probably like the rest of the boats that Maryland Natural Resources Police garnered with a grant with a group of municipalities. And it's fairly technical. So the pre-patrol in that boat probably takes 20 to 30 minutes. And it's a very expensive boat. It also has a cockpit. So the harbor master's office is typically patrolling on their own, one person. And so while there are certain functions that would be wonderful for that boat for our use, it is not a good boat as a tool for us to collect fees, do code enforcement, and do our day-to-day work. Could we man it for 4th of July? Sure. Could we take dignitaries on it or scope out a new sailing race on it? Definitely. But it is 26 foot, which gets into, a larger boat. And because of the cockpit, it becomes difficult for one person to just jump on and go and do a variety of functions.
The boat that you're looking at, how long is it?
It's 24.
24. So the change between 24 inches and 24 feet and 27 feet makes a big difference? That much of a difference?
I think absolutely.
That part makes sense, but the harbor master was referring to the length, so that's what maybe the question I issued. All right, so the police boat would not be suitable from what you said. And just before we get to Monday's vote, if you could seek clarification on the assumptions you made at the beginning of your remarks about being encumbered by certain grants that it had. You said you
Well,
you
I
said
actually sat on the committee when those boats were purchased.
Uh-huh.
And so I'm familiar with the Homeland Security grants that were utilized.
Okay.
I don't know all of the rules that go with that grant. But I know that I'm fairly sure that that was purchased on a Homeland Security grant, Court Security to be specific.
Okay, so since we don't know that for certain, either like it's confirmed or if it put that aside, you're saying even if that wasn't an issue because of the configuration of the boat, you couldn't man it with one person and use it for the purposes that you need for the harbor master?
What I envision is an inability to get underway readily on a daily basis, a difficulty in training staff because our staff has a fair turnover with part-timers. I envision accidents. I envision maintenance problems. I don't envision it to be an efficient tool to do what it is that we have to do.
Okay.
Although there are functions that it would be helpful for.
And what about the fire department boats?
The fire department boat is very large, and probably Chief Simmons can address this question. It probably requires 4 men to get underway.
Typically, we have a crew of 3 to 4. Typically, we have a crew of 3 to 4, and that's dispatched through 911. So I think the question was patrolling?
Yeah.
That's not what we do. That's not what we do.
Could the harbor master use the boat for that purpose?
The fireboat, I would not recommend it. You know, that has to be standby for rescues and whatever they dispatch it for. Whether it's someone who jumped off the bridge, or we have something like the other day where we had, the other month, where we had 22 people in the water. It was lucky that the fireboat was already on the water to actually perform the rescue, but to have that out patrolling and to receive a 911 call on the water and the fire crew could not get out there that specialize in rescue, that would be good.
Yes. Mike.
Yeah, at the fireboats in Weems
Start with
Creek,
your name, please.
Tom Andrews, I work here,
Yeah.
at least for the moment. That'll always change. If the fireboat were patrolling in Weems Creek and they got a call to go to the harbor, that would be an issue.
I apologize. All right, then let's focus on the other harbor master boats. So there's one boat that is in the process of being sold by auction right now, correct?
It's actually been taken down.
Taken down, that's Patrol Boat 1, that's the one we're talking about.
Okay. And so that boat is being sold for what purpose? For what reason?
Well, it was set up to be sold because we were purchasing, if we get approval for this boat, this new boat.
The boat is also being sold because it is not financially efficient any longer. To coin the phrase from the people that had the grant, it's past her useful life.
So is the concept that we'd be selling patrol boats 1 and 2 and replace those 2 boats with this purchase? Oh, no, that is the only one boat.
Just the one
That's the
boat.
one that was on auction, that was taken down
No,
because this
right.
wasn't approved yet.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Okay. So that's past its useful life. That's the one you were talking about, that you started with, that the repairs are coming from Austria and everything is very shaky. Yeah. Okay. What other, does the harbor master have other boats that can be used for patrol?
You have Patrol Boat 2, which is the little the Zodiac,
Okay.
which is the one you just talked about earlier, that's just been refurbished.
Okay.
And that's primarily a collection boat, and other harbor duties that we have. We've had that boat since 2006, and we just this winter got new floats, we got it refurbished, because it was really getting bad. The engine on that one, for instance, got 8,500 hours with it before it finally gave up the ghost. And without, as far as maintenance on that was just oil changes and tune-ups, things like that. So that's what we're hoping for. This other boat would be similar, and we would have a low maintenance boat.
So if the Zodiac was just refurbished, why do you need 2 patrol boats?
I can speak to that.
Oh, okay.
We work a multitude of special events that absolutely require 2 patrol boats, including 4th of July, MRE tug of war, presidential visits, any number of things. So for one thing, we always need a backup. So I can't just say on a Saturday, this one needs a new impeller, it's broken, so I can't collect fees for the entire day. So for one thing, we need a backup. For the other thing, that on busy days, but also for special events, which there are at least a dozen, we need to have 2 boats. We need to be able to hold a line so that if the fireworks are in this area, we can make sure that no boats traverse that area. And it can't be done with 1 patrol boat. In addition, I would say that the 22-foot Zodiac, if you actually boarded her, she's very small. Her decks are very small. She's a great boat. However, just the other day, I had to take Senator Pica out to scope out a sailboat race, and they wanted to put 3 people on board. So we were absolutely, looked ridiculous because there's no space to put that many people. And there are a multitude of reasons why we might want to put some crew members on deck, and we need a little more space. So even though 22 to 24 doesn't sound like a much bigger boat, it's a much bigger boat because that Zodiac is taken up largely by the inflatable tubes.
Okay. I'm looking at your answers to the questions I had posed in advance and just going through them. The first question was why this particular boat model, and I think you gave a nice explanation. Your explanation is self-explanatory. Was there anything you'd like to add, though?
Sure. Actually, done a ton of study on the Everglades boat versus the Boston Whaler versus the Milk Pro versus some number of boats. The Everglades is the only boat that has this variable dead rise construction. So what that means is the front of the boat is nice and sleek and has a nice V and it cuts the water, but the back of the boat is flat. So when I go to collect a fee or I walk left or walk right, it's a nice flat workstation that doesn't tilt to one side or the other. It also is glass on glass on glass construction, which sort of is my way of describing that ram cap construction. And having worked 20 years on the water with NRP, I loved the Boston Whaler. I loved lots of boats that had wood inside the transom. But after 10 years or so, they would frequently get waterlogged. And once that boat is waterlogged, it can't get up on plane or it can't get up on plane efficiently. And there's not a lot to do with it other than put it on dry dock, drill holes in it, and let it dry for 6 months. So truly, though it's not the most cheap, not the most inexpensive boat, I feel very strongly that it is the best value for the city.
Okay, thank you. I see your comment about why grant funds are not being sought for this. Anything else you'd like to add to that?
Oh, gosh. I have to compliment Mr. Walters. He did a fantastic job using grant funds, and we do use a lot of grant funds in the city. We have derelict and debris. We have 2 pump-out boats. We have a pump-out operating and maintenance budget. We have waterway improvement grants. And there does come a time when you need a tool that is unencumbered, so that if I want to tow a barge to do fireworks, I'm not breaking a rule. If I want to collect fees, I'm not breaking a rule. And also, because I want to collect fees in this boat, there are only a few grants that I would be eligible for.
Okay. Regarding why buy this boat now as opposed to waiting for approval in the new budget, it's kind of twofold. Your explanations make sense, but they beg the question why it wasn't done in last year's budget. So either it was, in my mind, and help me understand why I'm wrong, either it was foreseeable and we should have addressed this in last year's budget, or it can wait for the next one.
Yeah, I don't know if I can speak to last year's budget. I don't know what that budget looked like. I got here in October. So I can't speak to what happened last year. I can tell you next year I doubt the funds will be available because we've had a certain chain of events. We didn't expect that 110 Compromise would cancel our lease, but they did. So that's an extra $22,000. And then we have some extra money in full-time salaries that wasn't expected.
Okay, that makes sense. Cost to maintain this boat will be addressed. You have a brief answer to that. Anything else you'd like to add to that?
Sure. So Yamaha outboard motor is super reliable. To attest to that, we got 8,500 hours out of the last motor, and she's still running. Not well, but she's a backup motor. So the state of Maryland also now employs a Yamaha certified mechanic. Their labor rates are way lower than the general market. And we are able to get the boat maintained over there. In a pinch, we can certainly use local Yamaha certified mechanics. And our staff is actually certified to do the oil changes on it. So the cost to maintain it is very low.
Okay. The, in your application, you refer to the boat doing some search and rescue. Let's start big picture. Does the Harbor Master's Office have authority from the code or any other delegation to do search and rescue?
The harbor master has a mission to provide safe, efficient, and functional waterways. So, and while we're not police or fire, we are public servants. So anything that may happen, such as an unfortunate fall overboard and drowning, or as Chief Simmons referenced, 22 sailors in the water, not only is my staff trained to respond, I would say that they would be required to respond.
So,
We recently, and maybe Chief Simmons could speak more to that.
well, let me, Chief, before you start, let me just ask. I assume the term search and rescue have very defined terms, right? I mean, it's not just like you happen to see someone and you pull them out of the water. You have search and rescue certifications and trainings. Is that a good assumption?
It is a good assumption. However, and I'll let Ms. Leonard speak to this. Under the instruction of the Director of Office of Emergency Management, I'm reading 1504-040. I can direct them to aid in search and rescue. In other words, if the fire department joined by Queen Anne's are doing a search and rescue around the Bay Area or the dock.
We're talking about they're just going to be patrolling and they see something and they're responding. They're not waiting for instructions from you.
I'm thinking of something different, that a search, actual search to rescue. So that's what I'm talking about. So actually, the fire department would be dispatched on something like that. It'd probably be a couple different fire boats, maybe one from Anne Arundel County, maybe one from Queen Anne's. So if they needed more boats on patrol, at the direction of the fire chief or the police chief or myself, we can call the harbor master and say, hey, look, send over a patrol boat. We need you to canvass this certain area, looking for whatever, X. So
Does that sort of search and rescue mission require specialized training?
not in that capacity. Now, the folks that are leading the mission, the fire department, it does.
So you'd welcome to help even though they didn't have the same training that fire departments
Yeah.
that have.
Absolutely, under our direction, directly.
Is there a scenario where the harbor master's office is going to be doing search and rescue that's not under your direction?
Not the search part, but the rescue part. And if I could play something out, if I could pull it up real quickly. It's actually the 911 call.
What is the address of the emergency?
Okay, and it's the end of Eastern Ave on Horn Point. I don't know if it's an emergency, but I'm on the water here, and I've just seen about 20 sailboats go over.
Okay. Hang on for just a second, sir.
Okay.
So instead of playing the whole thing, if it's a situation like that and they can go out and pluck folks out of the water, we want them to do that. We want them to do that. Just fortunately that day the fireboat was on the water. However, if the fireboat had to come from Eastport Firehouse to man the fireboat to get out there, we had a lot more people in the water a lot longer. So if they can do things like that, it would be immense help to us in the fire department.
And is there specialized training for that kind of rescue?
Not that kind of rescue, no. Because basically, any mariner could come up and pluck someone from the water.
Okay, so that said, does the harbor masters, the people manning the boat, get training on rescue?
Yeah, and part of our basic training when we start, we do man overboard drills with them on the boats. Exactly. And
Any
we're also,
certifications that those individuals can get?
yeah, there is, I don't know of anybody that gives a certification for that, other than somebody took a Coast Guard course, you know, that they might have that. But what we would do is, we'd probably have this boat kept at, you know, size slip 3 or slip 4, where he would be right there available if it wasn't that, and somebody was in the office, myself, somebody, we could jump on that boat and be out there in a minute. You know, sometimes the other patrol boat might not do that.
If you'd like, I could talk a little bit more about the training if you want.
The training that the harbor master's office will get, please?
Yes, okay. This is training that we did last December. Basically, after we had the incident on December the 18th on the water, I got with the harbor master and we decided to do a little bit more training so they could have a little bit more proficiency in a number of different things. And what we did is critique that actual incident. So we critiqued that incident. The fire department was there. We had the sailing club there. If you turn the page where we talked about that, turn to page 6, please. So initially we started out, we talked about that event. We looked at what went well in that event and what could be improved. And then once we moved on in the training, we talked about where normal folks can make an impact. And we used 3 different scenarios. One was the Dunkirk evacuation. If you remember from your high school history class, it was mariners that made a difference there. Tom was there. There you go. He could tell us all about it. Then we talked about the Miracle on the Hudson, where it was actually mariners that kind of saved the day that day as well. So we want people to do something within their training scope. And then we talked about the Inner Harbor taxi accident, which was in 2004, where we had some naval reservists nearby, and they picked it up and they went out and they saved a bunch of folks in an overturned water taxi. So we talked about all those situations. Turn to page 8. We went over section 15, which talks about the powers and the authority of the harbor master. And I'm giving you the Reader's Digest version. Can you turn to page 15? And remember, we had all the harbor master crew here for this, and this went from like 8 o'clock to 12 o'clock that morning. Incident documentation. We talked about incident documentation. If you run into an incident, a significant incident, how do you document it, and all. So we did that. We created some scenarios where they had to document stuff to get their proficiency up in that. Turn to page 16. We did an incident scenario. On page 16, you're out on one of the patrol boats, Chesapeake crabbing charters, and all. They're pulling traps. They get a radio call, frantic. Harbor master, our captain is falling overboard. We cannot stop the ship. We need help. Harbor master. So we gave them scenarios to work through as well as part of the training and a follow-up. And then on 17, this is the follow-up training to help them more be acclimated when they run calls with the fire department. IS 100, Introduction to the Incident Command System, 200, Single Resources, National Incident Management System, and a National Response Framework, all of which fire and police operate off of. That's the command and control procedures they use in an emergency. So to speak to their training, we were very cognizant of the training that they needed, and we've been working on that lately. And again, this was a training we did in December, was it, Beth?
I believe it was January.
January. So there's quite a bit of training that goes on with the harbor master and the fire department and the Office of Emergency Management to make sure that all efforts are coordinated.
And in addition to that, each boat captain, when we hire somebody new, even somebody that's Coast Guard certified as a captain, they get at least 7 or 8 shifts where they're working with an experienced captain, and they go through all the procedures on that particular vessel, and a lot of docking clear, going alongside boats all day long, and we got to do it right. And we practice a little man overboard, pulling things up, because sometimes we pull people up, pull logs up, and everything else, but we don't want to damage our boat or the other people's boats, and we want them to get back safely.
I appreciate all that information. Alderman Becker, any questions?
I guess I'm trying to figure out what the agenda for our committee is. Are we focusing on the transfer, or are we getting into the whole broader area of what the harbor master does? I believe we should be focusing on the budget transfer and the information there.
I think you're right that we need to be focused on the transfer and this committee's particular focus on the environmental impacts or relationship between the transfer and the environmental issues. Certainly, it's public cost interest for more the financial aspect. I wasn't trying to get into the broader mission of the harbor master, but beyond
Yeah, good.
this purchase. Personally. So anyway, so that's other questions.
Nope. I think the materials are, I think, more than we've ever gotten for any other GT, ever. But I thought the statement we got, which I admit was late in our packet for Monday night, was pretty much direct and to the point, and I felt made the case.
Is there anybody else present that would like to make a statement? Mr. Walters? So I give you a microphone. Normally that one is at the podium. You want to sit at the table or go to the podium? So we'll come around. Sure. You got so little, can't talk.
Hello, my name's J.T. Walters, 705 Americana Drive, Annapolis, 21403. Thank you very much for holding this hearing and inviting me. And let me say at the outset, I'm not opposing the acquisition of a new boat. I am very much opposing the sale of the old boat.
Let's be clear though, but it's not before us right now. This committee has before it the GT with the purchase of this boat.
But the patrol boat one had been done to the Scott County, so
The scope of this committee's meeting is the voting favorably or unfavorably for the transfer to the purchase of this boat.
well, as I said, I'm not opposed to the city acquiring another boat. I don't think that's the right boat for that job. But that's the whether or not it's the right boat is going to be separate matter. Since we're narrowing it solely to the budget transfer,
I'm not narrowing it, it is what it is.
I do have a prepared statement.
Okay.
And I would like to enter my statement in the record.
Okay. As long as, this is the written statement that you would like entered into the record, right? It happened.
No, I just presented it with, the subject is appropriate harbor master boat for the missions as directed by City Council in Title 15 and Title 2 for the City Harbor Master. The City Council has never authorized the harbor master to conduct search and rescue or to act as law enforcement. These missions are nowhere to be found in Title 15 or Title 2. The harbor and city dock are under the cognizance of the Environmental Matters Committee and the Economic Matters Committee, not the Public Safety Committee. The harbor master staff are all part-time seasonal. They do not have the training, equipment, or expertise to be first responders. I said, and I will reiterate that, asked David Stokes, Douglas Malley, or Kevin Simmons if they would rent truck drivers, the boat drivers, that had not been through any fire and emergency training to run into a burning building with their team.
My view is that we accept people to speak occasionally on meetings as providing public testimony. We do not give them the opportunity to directly question anybody. However, giving Mr. Walters the opportunity to question anybody, but I think I can leave a statement and we could do with it what you want, whether we choose to ask our own follow-up questions or not. Speak closer to your mic, then.
Somehow it turned off. Okay. More importantly, does the city want the potential legal risks that will come with sending untrained people to an emergency scene, acting under color of authority they do not have, are not trained for, and are not equipped for? Or conversely, is the council willing to pay the cost of providing an additional layer of law enforcement on the water? Currently, the Annapolis Fire Department already has the mission of search and rescue, for which, to the best of my knowledge and belief, they have two ideal boats. AFD is included in the intergovernmental MOU that includes state and county fire and rescue services and are supplemented by the Navy and the Coast Guard. As it is now, the City Council just barely gives the Harbor Master enough funding to perform the missions that the Council has assigned by legislation to the Harbor Master. It is all well and good if they happen to be in the right place at the right time to be helpful Good Samaritans, which has happened 3 or 4 times in my years, and then to get out of the way of the professional first responders as soon as the professionals arrive on the scene. It is another thing entirely to pull them off the mission as assigned in legislation by this council, to have them rush off to the Bay Bridge, getting in the way of professional first responders for a search they aren't trained or equipped to aid. In so doing, they will be neglecting the missions that you have assigned them. How many fees will not be collected in that time? The Annapolis Police Department already has a $250,000 patrol boat for a mission they didn't have. It was stored behind the Eastport Fire Station in shrink wrap for several years. Where it is now, I have no idea, but I'm reasonably certain APD isn't using it in the performance of their missions. The Harbor Master's office currently has 2 patrol boats. One is newly refurbished Zodiac powered by an outboard motor, exactly the type of boat described in the budget revision request, and it will get to Weems Creek pretty quickly should the need arise. To the best of my knowledge and recollection, the city has 1 police boat, unused, 1 excellent fire boat, well used, a smaller police Zodiac for the SWAT team, a smaller fire and rescue Zodiac, 2 Harbor Master fee collection and code enforcement patrol boats, both very well used, and only 1 very much overused pump-out boat. Does the city need to incur the cost and attendant liability of yet another police boat / patrol boat? The city does need a second pump-out boat, which had been in the works for 2 years, and I understand is now finally on the way. Up to now, the pump-out boats are fully grant-funded, including operating costs. This is not a forever guarantee, however. 75% of this is federal money, 25% is state money. Under the Trump administration budgets, I don't think we can count on this to remain unchanged in the future. The Harbor Master's 2 primary boats have been designed to best serve in their Title 15 missions assigned to them by the City Council. If the Council chooses to add a search and rescue mission to the Harbor Master, it should do so by appropriate legislation, not by accident, through the back door, or by purchasing an inappropriate or unneeded equipment. A search and rescue boat should be an open-air patrol boat as described in the proposed budget revision, so the boat operators can better hear victims in the water, etc. A fee collection and code enforcement boat has a completely different mission, however. It carries a lot of administrative paperwork, permit schedules, as well as cash and credit card receipts which need to be protected from wind and rain. The cabin enclosure protects the money, the receipts, the customer logs, the credit card receipts, the credit card machine, mooring permit logs from wind and rain, so that fee collection continues even in bad weather. I'll just add as an aside, I guarantee you cannot write those receipts in driving rain in an open boat. It's been tried. Each time a city boat accidentally hits a customer boat while collecting fees or performing pump outs, the city incurs a repair bill. The jet drive boats are far more maneuverable than outboards. Proof, our outlay for damages to customer boats went way, way down after we acquired the jet boats. We managed 2 full years without a single customer damage claim. A trained boat operator can make the jet drive boat go sideways.
So I'm going to interrupt. You've already been 5 minutes. If you could.
I'm 2/3. Thank you.
2 more minutes, please.
The problem with jet drive boats is if you learn to drive on an outboard, the jet seems counterintuitive and very difficult to drive until you learn how to drive it. The U.S. Navy is moving more and more of their fleet to jet drive, including Virginia-class submarines. Coast Guard is moving a large percentage of their fleet to jet drive. Almost all new fire boats, including ours, are jet drive, so that they can be held on station at the right location from which to fight the fire. And the jet drive doesn't risk injuring a person in the water if you do happen to become engaged in a rescue operation. According to the American Association of Boat and Yacht Manufacturers, the average American boat owner puts less than 80 hours a year on his boat engine. See the Coast Guard 2001 attached. They show 76.5 hours a year. During my 11 years association with the Harbor Master's Office, we routinely put 1,300 hours per year on the engines of the 2 aluminum boats. So we put about 16 average boater years on our engines each and every year. My predecessor and I fully expected to spend about $30,000 per boat on new engines every 5 to 6 years. There's an attachment that explains that. The 2 aluminum boats represent a total investment of about $300,000 each.
Mr. Walters, wrap it up, please.
The hulls are good for a working life expectancy of 50 years. One is now 16 years old, the other is 11. If you have them inspected by a knowledgeable aluminum boat surveyor, he'll tell you the boats, not the current engines, are good for another 30 to 40 years. One is already on its 2nd engine, the other one on its 3rd. They would both be
Mr.
happy.
Walters, please wrap it up.
The most important
I'm
message
asking you to read the rest of the statement. Please wrap it up. We have the rest of the statement in front of us. We don't need it read to us.
Well, as I said, thank you for inviting me to this hearing. I'm sorry you wouldn't let me finish, considering the amount of time everyone else was given. I understand, and as I said, the important factor, I believe, is that the existing boats be retained. They can be shrink-wrapped and stored with the police boat. At some point, they'll be wanted again.
Thank you. Appreciate
And
your testimony.
I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I do not have any questions for you. Do either of you have any questions, Mr. Walters? Okay. Thank you. Harbor Master, I'm not certainly asking you to respond to the testimony that you just heard, but I want to give you the opportunity to respond should you wish to.
I would just say that moving forward, none of this has anything to do. I would just say I've been in the office 6 months. I can certainly respect and appreciate all of the contributions that Harbor Master Walters made, and this isn't about that. And I really respect the work that he did. That's all I would say.
Okay, thank you. Chief Simmons, same thing, not requiring you to answer, but if there's any follow-up you have. Okay, thank you. So I'm going to try to summarize where I think we're at. The subject at issue is a general transfer request for $90,000 interdepartmental within the department to fund the purchase of a boat. That is the scope of what we have before us. We had, thanks to Mr. Walters, I think a lot of good questions to ask and poke at to explore whether this transfer made sense, whether it was justified in the big picture scope, whether it had environmental impacts, It is not our job to micromanage a department's individual selections, so whether this boat or another boat is a better choice is not something I think this committee has the authority, nor would it be appropriate to explore whether this particular boat is the right boat over another choice. So I wasn't interested in pursuing those micromanaged type questions personally. The questions that I had, which again I'm appreciative of having, thanks to Mr. Walters, I think have been more than satisfactorily addressed by all the participants of this meeting, including Harbor Master Malk, Assistant Harbor Master, did I get that right? And of course Chief Simmons, I appreciate, and Ms. Lunder, thank you for your input as well. And we had City Manager Andrews, of course. We have written testimony that I think is helpful to have. I think we should keep this attached to this GT for when it goes before the full council, so they have everything that we have. So I'll ask Ms. Gaines to, we have 4 documents. We have something from the Harbor Master's office titled Questions Regarding the New Boat Purchase. We have something from Mr. Simmons' office, starting with after Action 7 River. We have an email regarding the new boat purchase, and we have Mr. Walters' information and testimony, so I'll ask Mr. Gaines to attach all those documents. But I have no further questions and no hesitation in approving this general transfer, personally.
I would make a motion that the committee recommend approval of the GT.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
None opposed, none abstaining. Thank you, everyone, for your time. Appreciate everyone making the accommodations to come on an extra day, making the time out of your otherwise busy days. With nothing further, I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Committee is adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for your time.